Well, welcome back to Quebec. As you can see, we've got positive temperatures, which is a little bit of a concern, but it was cold overnight, so I think the track should hold out throughout the day's racing, but it won't make it any easier for the later rounds of this sprint event. Now, let's have a look at the course. Scott, you know, a pretty easy start, just a small rise, but then when they get to the 600 meters, the work really starts.
Absolutely, and you can see that there's this fast descent coming towards the end, and thankfully for the spectators, we get to have a very flat finish, so that there's going to be some real excitement coming up to the finish line.
Well, it's going to be a lot of speed, and if you're going to break clear halfway through, you want a decent lead going over the top of that final hill. Sundling it is, who was fastest in qualifying, got herself into the top 4 of the World Championship event in Seefeld a few weeks back, so she's on very, very good form. The fight really is for the sprint title for the year. Now, let's just fill you in on the situation there. Nielsen leads on 576, and 33 points behind is Maiken Kaspersen Faller of Norway. Faller has dominated the Crystal Globe sprint for the last 3 seasons, and Nielsen looks as though she's just about to seize her chance. So if Nielsen, as I say, 33 points clear, if Nielsen finishes in the top 2, the title is hers by my calculation.
So the pressure's on. I just wonder if she's got that. She has that in her mind. She'll know that. Will she be able to handle the pressure?
Well, it's going to be very interesting indeed, especially as Nielsen and Faller have decided to go in Group 3 together. There you see it. Jakobsen starts for Norway in heat number 1. She's on reasonable form. Therese Johaug getting through to the final of a sprint. How about that? Good to see. But it's an indication that the numbers aren't here as we watch Bolshunov choose his number for the men's heats. And there's Federico Pellegrino, one of the best, all-time best sprinters, been outdone by Johannes Husfeldt. Klæbo, there he is, the master when it comes to sprinting. Is he going to produce another result? But have a look at the men's start sheet. 3 Union Jacks for the first time ever. All 3 of the guys have got through. Should be fantastic. I really hope that 2 of them at least can make it through to the semi-finals, and certainly Clunet and Andy Young are in that sort of form. So first heat for the women. We'll go through the runners and riders. This is Astrid Jakobsen, who's got a sprint world title to her name. You have to go all the way back to 2007. Usberg there has to enter the sprint to get some points to hold off Neprayeva, who's charging. On the right of your screen, Jakobsen. Jessie Diggins there wearing number 15 for the United States in the middle of the picture, the blue suit. Only one blue suit, so you won't miss her. Sweden, of course, wearing the white, predominantly white, Johanna Sundling it is, and I think Sundling, having produced the fastest qualifying time, probably favourite to take this one.
Yes, certainly, and she had a very unfortunate situation at the World Championships, breaking her pole just before the finish, and she was trying to get to the finish line with that one pole, but unfortunately just didn't have enough momentum.
Yeah, lots of tactics involved in the Seefeld sprints at the World Championship. Strong start coming in from Stenseth of Norway. Slowest qualifier in this heat, but not intimidated by what she's seen. And just looking at the bib, is that Usberg? I think it may be Usberg who's gone out front, and the tactic's pretty obvious. Usberg knows she's unlikely to win this heat, and therefore her best chance of going through to the next round is to produce a really fast time, so a couple of lucky losers go from this heat. And from what we've seen from her racing, she should be capable of doing that.
Yes, certainly, but it's a very challenging heat to be doing that. You know, Jessica Diggins, we've got Jonna Sundling. I think this is going to be a real challenge. Unfortunately for Jessica Diggins last week falling, that was a real shame for her. So let's see what she can pull out the bag today.
Yeah, Diggins not had a bad season, 7th in the sprint standings. Of course, she got a fantastic win in Konya in Italy. 1 or 2 big names missing, but it was a typical Diggins performance, coming from behind, fighting hard in the closing stages, just to nip in and take the victory there. So Usberg has set a pretty stiff pace, and I think there will be 1 or 2 tactical heats in this sprint event. So it's going to be interesting to see what sort of time do you think she's going to need to get through as a lucky loser, should she finish lower than second.
Well, it's going to be close to somewhere around 3:30, maybe 3:27, I would say. But you know, that's a very, very fast heat in that situation.
Yeah, fastest qualifying time was 3:25. Usberg, incidentally, 3:29.51. So if she matches that, and I don't think that's going to be possible because you can see how much it's cut up already.
Incredibly cut up, and I think that's a real advantage in going in Group 1, as we could see for the men. The three favourites opted to go in Group 1.
Yeah, if you're in Group 5, you've got minimal time between your heat and your semi-final. You're going to be pretty exhausted at the end of that. Good recovery from Jonas Sundling coming down the hill. She used the slipstream well and now starting to put a bit of pressure onto Usberg. Jessie Diggins, I think, realising that this is a serious situation. It's a long, punishing course here, 1.6 kilometres. You won't find many athletes that will tell you that's a sprint.
Absolutely not, and the pain they'll be experiencing right now. Look how deep the snow is. They're really having to fight maximally for the back four to keep up with Usberg and Jonas Sundling here.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see whether this course favours the likes of Nielsen or Faller. You can see the finish in the background, and it's still Usberg leading, but she's there to be shot at. Here come the speed merchants. Sundling moves out to her right and just stays in the low free skate, but the soft conditions hindering that a little bit. Jess Diggins gets right up behind the Norwegian. She should move fairly shortly if she wants to get herself into the top two, but Usberg still keeping a fairly stiff pace. It may not be that easy to match it. Round the top corner, another 120 metres to go, and it's still Sundling leading for Sweden. Usberg in two, the woman that's done all the donkey work so far, and Jess Diggins is trying to raise her game, but there's no response from the legs. Sundling's going to take this first heat. She'll go through to the final, and if Usberg makes the semi, that can only do her good. She's done it, and that's a fantastic move from her, celebrating already. She may just cruise the semi. She's got some points. She desperately needed that in her bid to be the overall champion this year.
It's incredibly laboured skiing with this thick snow here. They're having to really fight. The technique isn't the same as usual. They're really putting a lot of effort into each pole, each kick, concentrating on that.
Yeah, it's a day for the 7-stone weakling with a decent set of lats who can do a bit of double poling. You want to be floating over this stuff. I'm not sure it suits Bolshinov, but Bolshinov has surprised me so many times with what he can do and the conditions that he can ski, and that I wouldn't be surprised if he came through to make the final.
It would be a big mistake to write him off because, you know, he proves himself in the distance, he proves himself in the sprint competitions.
Sundling, very easy, and even she was struggling with the free skate a little, but she's got a good, powerful double pole to finish. So Usberg's charge, in the end, paying off. I think she knew those were the only tactics where she was guaranteed to go through into the semi-final.
Yeah, I think so, and I'm wondering, was what we saw there with Jonas Sundling being so far ahead a representation of Usberg's energy output, or whether or not she was being tactical and reserving that energy, knowing that Diggins wasn't going to catch her?
Heat number 2, and Neprayeva, who trails Usberg by 97 points, really has to beat the Norwegian today to give herself a chance of winning the overall World Cup. It could be a double Russian victory, you don't know. Bolshunov and Neprayeva. For Italy, we have Greta Laurent, 20th in qualifying, 3:34.72 her time. Nearest the camera at the moment, you probably recognise Krista Palmer-Koski. It wasn't the best World Championships for Palmer-Koski. It hasn't been the best season for Palmer-Koski. She's such a talent. Her heyday really back in 2017 in Lahti, where she was just amazing and kept the crowd on her feet there. Number 7, that's Sophie Caldwell of the USA. Now, she's ranked 4 in the World Cup standings at the moment. Just looking to see whether she's got a chance of overtaking Dahlqvist, who's 3. The answer is a slim one, slim to none.
It's going to be a real fight if she wants to close that gap.
Yeah, the difference 97 points. So Dahlqvist has got to fail to finish and get next next to no points. I can't see that happening, and Caldwell will need to win today to pick up the full quota of 100 points.
But I wouldn't say that's impossible, Patrick. You know, seventh place in the prologue. I don't see why she couldn't pull something special out of the bag. The conditions are unpredictable.
Yeah, the moment I say it's impossible, it will happen. So I will hold back on that one. Urvets of Slovenia it is who's taken the lead now. She's been producing earlier in the season, producing some incredible qualifying times, but then not being able to back it up. She's wearing 23 on the left of your screen, and I'm just hoping that today, qualifying in 23rd, she took it a little easy, risky, but she took it easy, and I'm hoping that we see something special, and certainly someone of her quality should be going through to the semi-finals.
Absolutely, and if she plays it, I mean, it seems like she has a weakness in tactics as opposed to physicality, so let's hope that she can play her cards properly today, and maybe we'll see her get to the finals.
Well, I'm looking forward to seeing what Ebba Andersson, who's in this heat for Sweden, doing. There's Ebba Andersson wearing 22, but also the darling of Swedish skiing now, Frida Karlsson. She made it through in the last heat. She's wearing bib number 12, so we'll see her in about 10 minutes' time. And certainly all the talk in Östersund, if it wasn't about biathlon, it was about Frida Karlsson from the cross-country skiing.
Absolutely.
Laurent looking good for Italy with slight lead over Ebba Andersson, and as I say, Andersson steps up the pace, takes Sophie Caldwell with her wearing 7.
Yeah, and Neprayeva, you can see she's falling back on the left-hand side. I'm not sure this is the best position for her. She definitely wants to get to the front of this pack, or at least get round the side.
But what I like about Neprayeva, she's got a much more upright position than the others. And the reason for that is it allows you to get the power down through the legs. As soon as you lean forward in these conditions, there's always that little chance that you're going to catch the ski tip. And the ski actually stalls if there's too much pressure on the front of the ski. So I think Neprayeva actually skiing very intelligently.
Yeah, perhaps. I mean, look at Andersson here. She's attacking very, very hard. Only Caldwell managing to keep up with her. I'm beginning to think that this attack is going to do some serious damage to Neprayeva that she might not be able to recover from.
And of course, if Neprayeva doesn't go through, Östberg will be celebrating already. 100 points or so clear. She'll go into the night with 2 races to go. And remember, mini tours, 50 points actually for a win, and then you get the bonus 200 points at the end of the weekend. So vitally important to be in a position to charge for the overall come Sunday.
Absolutely. Remember, Neprayeva not able to start the 10-kilometer sprint last weekend, having a little bit of a cold, and that might explain why she wasn't able to qualify in the prologue of the last sprint. So let's see if that's affected her today. All 4 leaders very closely packed.
So Ebba Andersson round the final corner, and she'll lead into the home straight as we see Sophie Caldwell look for a little bit of space on the inside of the turn. Number 10, that's Krista Parmakoski, not renowned for her sprinting prowess, but it's Parmakoski who's moving fastest down the home straight at the moment, closing up on Ebba Andersson of Sweden. But a good finish in the end from Caldwell. She realised the danger coming from Parmakoski, and Andersson Caldwell go through by right. Parmakoski will have to wait and see. The winning time, as you can see, 3:50 in the first heat. The winning time, 3:41. That is all due to the work done by Ingvild Östberg.
Makes you wonder, has that damaged the legs of Jonas Sundling and Östberg herself? Because it's going to be hard to, obviously, yeah, that's a fast pace.
Possibly, but it does mean that Neprayeva won't go through as a lucky loser, so she's achieved her aim. Östberg's got herself through to the semis. She's effectively knocked Neprayeva out.
Yeah. It was a great finish from Caldwell there. She absolute attack in the final 50 meters. It was going to be 3rd, but she accelerated, put her foot on the gas.
Yeah, and that means it's the end of the day for Parmakoski. Parmakoski at the on the outside. You can see the smaller figure, powerfully built Finn, and Caldwell with a very, very rapid last 20 meters. Neprayeva some way off the pace, 1.1 seconds behind. And Andersson delighted with that. Sweden have some new stars coming on. Andersson and, of course, Frida Karlsson, who we're going to see later on. Charlotte Kaller, I think, has been deposed from the throne. Now, this is the heat that many have been waiting for. It's certainly worthy of a semi-final, probably worthy of a final, because the World 1 and 2 are here. Number 9, Maiken Caspersen-Faller. Sensational season she's had again. Elise Bricard. There is Stina Nielsen. Tore her hamstring earlier on in the season, going over the finish line in Otapa. It was an impressive lunge, but one actually, the soft snow conditions, so she lunged with her right leg, the left knee hit the ground, which extended the stretch on the hamstring, and it just went twang. It's not a nice feeling. I would suspect she's still got a bit of a hole in the back of her leg. But she's out there racing, and away we go. Now, Nielsen, Scott, is the biggest athlete in this field. I'm just hazarding a guess, but I suspect she's a couple of kilos heavier than the rest. They all weigh next to nothing. But these soft conditions don't suit the bigger athlete. So, yeah, it's a funny one, and it comes down to which athlete, because if you are a stronger athlete, and that typically if you weigh more and you are taller, strength can really be an advantage in these tough, slow conditions. And Nielsen with a slower tempo, do you think that's going to help? She does a lot of V2 compared to others who are switching to the V1.
I certainly think in these conditions, the longer you can stay in that upright position, like you said earlier, the better it is when you get into that steep snow in the hill. So yes, skate 2 as far into the hill as possible, and then breaking into the skate 1 when you lose that momentum.
Well, no surprise to see Faller leading. She's a front runner. I think you could say, I'm never convinced that front running in sprinting is always the way to go. Is Faller just trying to make sure that she goes through as a lucky loser if she doesn't finish in the top 2? Surely someone with her pedigree has got the confidence to know that she could win the final stages.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I get the sense that there's a tactic that seems to be correlating between teams, which is go hard at the start. Why that is, I'm not entirely sure, but I suspect it's got something to do with these conditions and how difficult it is for the other athletes to keep up with that intense pace.
Faller looking for tracks that have already been skied on, because she'll know that that's just a fraction quicker. But actually, when she won the World Championships in Seefeld, she knew that the only way to win was to go hard from the gun, because she doesn't have the devastating sprint finish that Nielsen has with her double poling skills.
And particularly on a day like today, on a course like this, the sprint finish is flat. There's a downhill, lots of recovery time, and it's just who can attack the hardest over that flat section coming into the finish line.
Nielsen looks comfortable in second. Just moving up on the near side is Lampitz of Slovenia. She's in a good position as Faller switches over to her right-hand side, just looking for slightly firmer snow. None of them have been raced out of it so far. Setlin wearing 19 for Sweden on the left of your screen, just tucking in behind her teammate Nielsen. And Mari Ida of Norway is there, who got the bronze medal in the World Championship. She's sitting in 5th place at the moment. Just going over the top of that hill there, Nielsen having that little spark in her stride. Every time she pushed off from her left leg, there was a little bit of a jump, and as you can see, that little bit of extra energy, it's damaged the rest of the group. Well, Setlin could do Nielsen a massive favour and get in between Nielsen and Faller to push Faller out of the qualifying spots, but it doesn't look as though that is going to happen. The World 1 and 2 proving too good for everyone else, and the longer the course, I was just wondering whether Faller might have an advantage over someone like Nielsen with this long course, but I think the finish here is absolutely custom-made for Stina Nielsen. Yeah, absolutely. She is in her prime in this situation. I wonder if this tactical move here from Faller, is she trying to catch up? Is she trying to overtake? Is she trying to intimidate? Because, of course, psychology at this point is paramount, to intimidate your opponent, take your skis off fast. I grant you that, but I also think conserving energy for the next round is just as important, if not more so at this stage, and Faller should be aware of the gap. Nielsen has a look over her shoulder. She's seen that the job is done. She can cruise into the finish, just needs to keep half an eye on those behind. She doesn't want to do a Johannes Husvert Klebo that we saw earlier on in the season in Ruka, where he relaxed before the line and missed out on the win. So Nielsen, Faller go through 3:46, and she did next to nothing. That's a phenomenal time from Nielsen. 5 seconds slower than the first heat, but she must have lost 10 seconds in the home straight. Yeah, definitely. And
when you can take your foot off the gas that much and still be faster than the first heat, I think that bodes well for her come the final or semi-final, supposing she makes the final, of course.
So how is Falla going to win this sprint title?
Yeah,
or
tactics.
Can she?
Tactics, of course she can. I think she's light. I think if she can pick her line properly going up a hill such as the one you're looking at right now, I think it's important for her to be able to choose the line and choose what point she goes. And I think it's going to have to be up that hill, because if Nielsen is within reach on the sprint finish, I think it's going to go to Nielsen.
So no lucky losers coming from Heat 3. Diggins and Jakobsen still in the lucky loser slots. So there's the lineup for heat number 4 of 5, and then we will switch across to the men's competition. And I can tell you, mouth-watering prospect of Klæbo, Pellegrino and Bolshunov all in heat number 1. And just to add a little bit of spice, Iversen and Goldberg from Norway, both of whom have won World Cups, they're in there as well. So it's an incredibly powerful first heat.
It's going to be very tactical.
Now, number 18. In fact, I think that was 13. Here's the camera. 28 is Niskanen of Finland. We've got Italy's Katarina Gantz, who's done well to get through to this stage. She's on the far side wearing 25. Germany have Sandra Ringwald. Ringwald being the best of the Germans so far this season. And Nadine Feindrich for Switzerland in the dark suit, or the blue suit, I should say, wearing 13. There she is. And Maja Dahlqvist, who is 3rd in the Sprint World Cup rankings, and Dahlqvist over 100 points behind Falla. So all she's trying to do is defend that 3rd position from Sophie Caldwell of USA, and that shouldn't be too tough a job. Certainly, if she goes through to the semi-finals, she's achieved that.
Yeah, and do remember that Bjornsson and Dahlqvist both have the situation of having a yellow card, so if they make any mistakes, step on anyone's skis, that it's their fault, then they could get another yellow card today, so they need to be careful for that.
Dahlqvist leading, and she was the 8th fastest qualifier, 2nd fastest qualifier in this group. Only Sadie Bjornsson produced a better time. Bjornsson's had a good season, and I think she's got great prospects. Lying 11th in the standings. She's had, what, 1, 2, 3, I think, finals it is so far this year, making the top 6 on 3 occasions. That's pretty impressive. And, of course, getting on the podium in Lillehammer, the first of the sprint finals for the season.
Yeah, and also I'm impressed with Katarina Gantz here, taking a very quick pace at the beginning. I wonder if she's decided beforehand, I need to hit this one hard, create a psychological advantage over the rest of the athletes following. And she's not one of the fastest in this heat, so it's a brave move on her behalf, but she's light, and therefore when it comes to the hills, she's going to be able to climb with a little bit more ease.
Just having to lift the feet an inch and a half higher, and look at the control they have over the ski tips, just to make sure that they don't catch the softer snow. Sandra Ringwald cutting it very, very fine at the back.
Most of the athletes favouring to go on the right-hand side climbing that hill. I'm just wondering if it's either not been skied on quite so much, or if it's more compact.
Good pace set by Maja Dahlqvist.
Over the top of this hill, this is where it's going to be pivotal in the later stages. You really need to attack over the top of this climb. Don't lose speed. Unfortunately, we just saw from Gantz there, lost her footing a little bit and already opened a gap of about 5 meters from leaders Dahlqvist and Bjornsson.
Well, Dahlqvist really has had a remarkable season.
And she's got fast skis right now, that's for sure.
Well, yeah, she's got very, very quick skis. But, you know, just having a look at her World Cup results, and only once this year has she finished out of the top 3 when she's entered a freestyle sprint race. So she's a class act, and she may be the woman that puts pressure on Nielsen for the sprint title next year.
Yeah, certainly possible. It's great to see the Americans doing so well in the sprint competition. Definitely adding a little bit of spice when the Norwegians are so dominant.
So around the top turn, 3:30 on the clock. Remember that for the next heat. They were looking for a time of around 3:41 if they were going to get any lucky losers through, but they're not going to manage that. They're some 20-30 meters off the pace set by the first heat, thanks to the work of Østberg of Norway. Dahlqvist cruises across the line, and for me, that is enough to secure third position in the sprint standings for the season. She's guaranteed a top 12 finish, and that means that Sophie Caldwell of USA cannot catch her, whatever she does today. She can relax.
She can relax. Gans and Fadrich from Switzerland having a good sprint finish, a photo finish there. Unfortunately, Gans, although she was still fighting to get a first or second place, she lost ground in the closing meters before the finish line.
Well, the only bit of bad news for Sweden so far is that Ida Ingmarsdotter, who was 5th in the World Cup standings at the start of today, so Sweden with 1, 3 and 5 at the start of today, Ingmarsdotter finishing 31st in qualifying, not making it through, and she's likely to be overtaken by Nepraeva of Russia. She may well be overtaken by Jessie Diggins, puts her out of the top 6, puts her out of the money. Bad day for Ingmarsdotter. Well, it's a fairly imposing setting here in Quebec. And sadly, the weather conditions depleting the size of the crowds dramatically. Last year we had phenomenal weather and phenomenal crowds at the same time, but we're going to have some good racing, no doubt about that. Last of the women's heats, Lara Gimler we've just seen there for Germany. Sweden have Charlotte Kalla and Frida Karlsson. They start next door to each other. What are they, 15 years apart in terms of seniority, maybe even more than that, as Frida Karlsson third from the far side. No Norwegians in this heat, but we do have Belarukova of Russia, and then Slovenia's Katja Wisnar racing as well. She's wearing 17 on the left-hand side of your picture. Good start from Wisnar, and a solid start from Lara Gimler as well of Germany. Now,
how important it is to get, there's a real sprint to get round this first corner first, because if you can get into a good position, and you can see them all attacking here, get into a good position coming down this hill, it seems to favour you coming into the climb on the next when you get round this corner.
Yeah, I said no Norwegians. There is one Norwegian, Tiril Udnes Veng. It was the last heat with no Norwegians in it. So Tiril Udnes Veng fighting with Frida Karlsson for honours in the under-23 World Cup standings.
She would have chosen to go in Group 5, you know. She was the second or third finish from Norway, so she would have had a good decision. So going in Group 5, I think she favoured having an easier qualification to get through into the semi-finals.
Yeah, we've seen that a number of occasions, but using those tactics through the year, it's meant she's only made the finals on one occasion this season, and it's, you know, blindingly obvious if you look at the stats that those from who go into semi-final number 2, and all those from heats 4 and 5 do go into semi-final number 2, have far less chance of qualifying, one, for the final and then doing well in the final, because the last set of races are so much closer together.
Absolutely. We just saw Weng there. She was hanging back, didn't want to go down the hill first. Interesting tactics. So I think it's interesting to see that certain hills, certain parts of the course, athletes don't want to take the lead, or they want to get to the front and take the lead. So this is where they're attacking. I think that they're going to favour going out onto the right-hand side of this hill.
Well, Veng's put herself in exactly that position, and we'll see whether it pays off. She's up against Frida Karlsson now of Sweden, who went out hard early on. Charlotte Kalla, number 18, starting to try and make a move, but you just haven't seen the magic really from Charlotte Kalla so far this season. And in her mid-30s, it's going to be interesting to see what she decides to do, whether she decides to call it a day at some stage.
It's always a tough one. Athletes love the sport. They've been training most of their lives, certainly most of their adult lives, and sacrificed a lot of their youth for the sport, so retiring is no easy task.
Belorukova in third place for Russia. Belorukova, who started the season with a sprint win in Ruka. That was in the classic style, and actually she was on tremendous form in November. And that's always an interesting one, I find, Scott, that the bigger teams, the stronger teams, they have to be on form in November to be able to qualify for the team to get to the first World Cup. Those teams, say Switzerland, Germany, even Sweden, they can hold back a bit, get their best form in February when you have the World Championships or the Olympic Games.
Yeah, exactly, and we saw that with Slovenia getting a medal at the World Championships. They're not one of the big teams, and yes, certainly. Oh, we've from Russia, we've got Belorukova taking it very slow. I wonder what's happened to her.
Yeah, maybe the pulse rate has just gone flying sky high, but Belorukova certainly a bit of a mishap. We may see a replay on that, and it's meant that Charlotte Kalla is in the mix fighting for a position. This is a really gutsy performance from Kalla, and the longer the sprint race, the better the chances she has. The harder the conditions, the better the chances. So this is tailor-made for Charlotte Kalla today, and she'll enjoy the fact that she's beaten Frida Karlsson into second or third place. Sweden won. Oh, Weng just... Well, if Weng timed that lunge to perfection, she might just have nipped into automatic qualifying slot. 3:53 the time on that final heat. Remember the first heat, 3:41, and it wasn't so much the fact that Usberg went hard, it's the fact that the conditions have changed already.
Yeah, they certainly have, and that was a very tight lunge. It was a slow heat, so they really needed to get second place to qualify into the semi-finals.
Yeah, so unless I'm very much mistaken, the two lucky losers coming from heat number one, which might be why so many of the big guns in the men's have decided to go in heat one as well. Three Norwegians, a Russian, a Swede and an Italian lined up for the men's first heat as we have a look at the results of the last heat of the women. Charlotte Kalla getting the win there. Let's focus on the first heat of the men's, and it is a class act. Pellegrino nearest the camera, Klebo with the yellow bib just next door to him, and then Bolshunov of Russia, who is desperate to get a good result here because that will put him in such a strong position to take the overall title. There are only 14 points between Bolshunov and Klebo going into the last three races, or the mini tour here in Canada, and Bolshunov has gone off, as you would expect, very, very hard indeed.
Certainly instilling fear in everybody else. That's an incredible pace. Sprinting right out the gun. You saw Iversen wasn't hanging with the rest of the group at the beginning of the race. I wonder, is he tired or is he playing this tactically?
No, he often holds back at the start of a sprint. I mean, the more you put out in the first 500 meters, the less you've got to give in the last 500, and the last 500 are so much more important, unless, of course, you're then totally detached. So Iversen now, he has to make a decision. When is he going to up the work rate and try and close the gap on the leaders? But Bolshunov has gone ballistic here, and his tactics fairly short, but he's still got one big climb to come.
Has he? You know, if you go so hard at the beginning, and if anybody else behind, so we've got Klabo obviously behind him, and I think that Klabo certainly has the potential to take up a lot of speed on that final hill. So, Bolshunov leads. Sweden will be glad to see Victor Thorn sitting in second position at the moment. Federico Pellegrino of Italy in third, Klebo just behind him, and then we've got Goldberg and Iversen at the back of the pack, and the pace is relentless. Make a mental note of the time to the top of this climb. We're at least 12 seconds quicker than the women. Here goes Klebo, breaks to his right, and over the top goes Bolshunov, 1:57 on the clock. Iversen, although he has lost the group a little bit, he's still fighting. My sense is that he doesn't stand a chance of qualifying in this heat. It's definitely Bolshunov going absolutely intense from the gun.
Well, this is where Bolshunov loses his advantage. He's taken all the headwinds so far, and now coming down the hill, those behind him can just relax a little bit. Victor Thorn struggling to get in behind. He'd better just tuck deep and stay low.
I think, Patrick, you know, this has been such a fast heat. I don't think that any of the other heats are going to match it. So it could be possible that the two lucky losers will be from this heat. You could be safe if you're in third. Being in fourth position, it's a little bit risky.
Yeah, and Clebo, his ideal scenario would have been a slow heat, Pellegrino and Clebo going through, with Bolshunov being run out of the money. And now Bolshunov is going to tire, because you cannot do all that work and surely then produce a dynamic sprint down the home straight. We'll see. He's surprised us many times, but this is where the class sprinters should show their colours, and Clebo it is. This is a cruise to the finish. He's going to win this one easily. Keep an eye on the time, just around just over 3 minutes going around that top turn. 3:19 dead for Pellegrino, and Bolshunov on 3:19.2 has to hope that that is good enough to go through as a lucky loser. If it isn't, and I'd be very surprised if it wasn't, if it isn't, then the World Cup situation gets far more interesting with 2 distance races to go.
It certainly does, and Clebo, I think it was, yeah, he struggled last week in Falun. It wasn't an easy win for him. It came right down to the line. So when the conditions are unpredictable like this, it opens the door for somebody unexpected to push through at the final moments.
Now, the saving grace for Clebo, who has that slim lead in the overall World Cup standings, is that the final 2 races are mass starts, and you know, they're not excessively long ones, 2:15 kilometers. He's pretty good at hanging on in there, even in his current form, and I suspect he'll get onto the back of Bolshunov and just annoy the Russian all the way round. So the first heat is done and dusted, and we're going to have another, what, 35 minutes before we see those 2 great sprinters in action again. But plenty of quality racing to come before then. Maurice Magnificat, be nice to see the Frenchman have a good run in this second heat. Fastest qualifier from this group, Erik Bransdal of Norway, wearing 4. There he is, big, powerful man. Not convinced he's the right size for these conditions. And then we've got Joni Mäki of Finland, who is next door to him, a little slimmer, much lighter, and looked very good in qualifying.
Yeah, Magnificat, he's particularly good in pursuit competitions like Andrew Musgrave, but I suspect, yeah, these conditions don't favour him.
And Andrew Young, who will be racing in the next heat. 3 Brits through to the last 30 for the first time ever in a World Cup. 10, that's Ristomatti Hakala, 2 Finns. Joni Mäki just behind Hakala, 13. Andrei Larkov of Russia.
And all these athletes, Patrick, they know that the last heat was so incredibly fast that it's almost certain that you need to be in either first or second to qualify for the next heat.
Qualifying time, or the winning time, 3:18.78, and we'll try and get a few splits. 1:12, I had them at the top of this hill from the first heat, so we'll get some indication of whether Sweden's Theodor Pedersen has managed to match the best.
Well, he qualified in 30th position, and he's managed to hold his position well in second right now. But will he tire in the closing stages? I suspect so.
Well, I've got them around 3 seconds behind, so they're going to struggle to pull back 3 seconds when you consider the relentless pace that Bolshunov set on that first heat.
The pace that he went out at, and the pace he managed to maintain throughout the entire heat.
Yeah, they need to be well under 2 minutes at the top of the final big climb. Good recovery. I think that was Erik Bransdal. It was Erik Bransdal, very strong on that inside leg, but he might be feeling it now as he tries to generate a little bit more speed. Finland wanting to control this one, and it's Ristomatti Hakala who has the lead.
I'm surprised Pettersson is doing very well, still managing to jumping up this hill, attacking very hard. Maybe he paced himself in the prologue, you never know.
Pedersen doing good work, but they're still chasing the time of heat number 1. Hackler, just a quick glimpse over the right shoulder to see exactly where he stands. So many sprint races, the big screens in the stadium give away where you are. They haven't got that luxury here in Quebec City.
Eric Brandstyle qualifying in 4th position. He's lost the leading 3. He's going to struggle to catch up, make back that time now. Let's see how good his wax technicians have done. Can he gain that just by simply staying low in the tuck position?
Well, I think Bolshunov, as you saw there, with a lucky loser time of 3:19.24, I think he'll have given his skis to his waxman and said, get them ready, because there's no doubt I'm going through to the semi-finals and I'll be up against my Norwegian nemesis once again. And both of them will be in semi-final, well, likely to be in semi-final number 1, especially if Bolshunov ends up as the fastest of the 2 lucky losers going through. So Hackler still leading for Finland, but his teammate coming strong in the closing stages. That's Joni Mäki, and it's Mäki with the best last 20 metres, puts him into top spot. Hackler in 2. Photo finish with Pedersen, who we saw skiing well, but the winning time 6 seconds slower than heat number 1.
What a comeback from Brandstyle, though he didn't quite make it. It was incredible to see that from that distance behind, he was able to make up that time. I think that stands to show how important that last 200 meters of flat is. You don't have to be touching the front group to be able to make up that time and potentially take a 1st, 2nd, or 3rd.
On a course this length, pacing is absolutely crucial. Now, Bolshunov, you know, the reason for going hard was obvious. He wanted a lucky loser slot. When you're up against the world number 1 and the world number 2, the chances are you're not going to finish in the top 2. So the only way to get guaranteed going through is to produce an astonishing overall time, which is what Bolshunov has done. 6 seconds the margin between heat 1 and 2. Mäki and Hackler go through for Finland. That's good news for them. And we got Pedersen in 3rd, who is out. Now, first of the British competitors, and it's Andrew Young. Again, he's a big, strong man, and it might suit. We'll see. He does a lot of V2, always looks as though he's cruising. 23, Alex Harvey, last week of World Cup competition. The masks are all there. He's an absolute hero in this part of the world. The son, of course, of Pierre Harvey, who had a very, very distinguished career, not only in skiing, but also in cycling. So
look at the size of Andrew Young, yeah. Just towering over his opponents there.
6'4" and full of muscle.
Absolutely. These conditions, it's tough. Very tough for the heavier athletes.
You're too young for men at work, aren't you?
I think so.
I think you missed it. So let's see how we get on. Heat number 3, Harvey on the near side. America with Simeon Hamilton next door to him, and in the middle of the field, we've got the Russian bib of Andrei Melnichenko, who goes off very, very hard indeed. The number 21, that is Didrik Tunseth of Norway, left in the wake of Melnichenko. And Andrew Young, I think, pretty sensibly a steady start, nothing overly dramatic. 25 seconds round the top corner, so we'll get an idea over the next 2 heats.
Yeah, Melnichenko, he's gone just the same as Bolshunov. I think that it's a tactic, hit it hard at the beginning, and it seems to favour the Russians, just going aggressive from the start.
How many times can you do that in a day? It's all right if you're just looking for an overall fastest time, but if you've then got to do a semi and then you've got to raise your game for the final, surely it decreases your chances of getting on the podium.
Yeah, and if Bolshunov, if he wants to win, going that aggressive at the beginning, that's going to really put him in, do a lot of damage when it comes to the later stages of the competition.
But these sort of conditions, Scott, they favour the guys with the big engines rather than the guys with the fast twitch fibres.
I agree. I think, you know, there's definitely obviously a huge correlation between what bib number you start this race with and where you finish. I think the faster people in the prologue, they tend to do a lot better. Particularly as the conditions get harder, that becomes more and more so the case.
Well, it's not a bad time relative to the first group. Andrew Young down in 5th place at the moment.
Andrew Young, he can't afford to allow this gap to get too big. As we saw Eric Brandstad in the previous group, he was able to cling on just because he came over the final hill with a decent enough attachment to the group, but as we can see, he's lost that connection now, and I don't think it's one that he's going to be able to recover.
Just starting to lose that tempo a little. Number 12 at the back, two British competitors going in the 5th heat, Musgrave and James Clunet. Clunet having a successful time over in China at the end of the World Championships. He made the move out there, won himself a pot of money. Melnichenko still leading. It's been a grinding effort from him. Simeon Hamilton in second looks very comfortable at the moment.
I think Harvey is also in a good position. I think as you're coming down this hill, it's easy to underestimate how intense this flat is at the end, and the opportunity. We've had a stumble there from Hamilton, and I think that, yeah, being in 5th position, 4th position here definitely doesn't put you any less odds to win or get in the top 2 as being in 2nd position.
Well, that's put Melnichenko in a good position, because he suddenly finds himself with 20 meters to spare. Andrew Young at the back struggling now to match the speed, despite the fact that he was the third fastest qualifier in this heat. The tempo rises once again, and it's a great effort coming in from Alex Harvey, who's desperate to see himself through to the semi-finals and put himself in a good position for the mini tour here. 50 points at stake today, but a good haul of points and seconds for the 2nd and 3rd stages of the mini tour. It's going to be Melnichenko who takes top spot, and Alex Harvey comes across the line, much to the delight of the fans here in Quebec. Hamilton 3 for USA, Tunseth 4 for Norway, Svensson in 5, and Andrew Young will not advance to the semi-finals. That's disappointing. Winning time from Melnichenko, 3:26. So despite the fact that the start was hard, they're still 5 seconds slower than that first heat.
Well, Melnichenko, we know that he's not quite as fast as Bolshunov. So, yeah, although he was going full gas from the beginning, it just isn't quite as fast as Bolshunov. Amazing to be able to maintain that level of intensity for the entire race. I don't think he's going to be able to match that in the semi-final. It's not enough time to recover starting in Group 3, and that intent. Maybe Bolshunov starting in Group 1, he can get away with it because he has that little extra time to recover.
So no lucky losers from heat number 3. 2 heats still to go. And here are the athletes involved in heat 3. Denis Spitsov, I think we probably expect to see him try and do the same as Bolshunov and Melnichenko and go exceptionally hard from gun to tape and just see what happens. We could have a massive Russians through to the semis. We don't actually have any Russians in heat number 5. So Spitsov, the last athlete they have who can make it through. Chanova of France goes in this heat. Number 29, nearest the camera, Logan Hanneman of USA. Backshiders there for France as well. Simic of Slovenia. And then Sindre Bjornstad Skor of Norway in the middle of the group, wearing bib number 9.
So Spitsov not taking the initiative at the beginning, so perhaps that is because he started, he finished the prologue 25th position, so perhaps he just doesn't have the potential to maintain that level of intensity from the beginning.
Well, the French taking early control of this heat number 4, Lucas Chanova, who's done well this season. Number 28, that's Adrian Backscheider. Now, we don't often see an athlete sacrifice his own success for someone else, but it might be quite useful in these conditions to protect your main player through the early stages. But I'm not sure that's what Backscheider is doing. He wants his own glory here. Lucas Chanova, who's in second at the moment. A good season, 7th in the Sprint World Cup standings. He's had, what, a couple of podiums. He's had 4 top 5 finishes this year in the sprint format. World Championships didn't really go his way.
World Championships extremely technical with the final hill, nobody wanting to lead going down there first. And although not quite as technical in those terms, this course here, it's definitely, there's a lot more challenges, particularly where you're going to position yourself coming over the final hill. I think 3rd, 4th, 5th is just as good as being in first position as long as the group is tightly packed.
As long as the group is tightly packed, and it was a similar experience in Seefeld. Now, just briefly, you were working for the Danish team out in Seefeld. Rather than racing, you were waxing. That's the first fall we've seen, or first big fall from Logan Hanneman of USA. He'll be a bit embarrassed about that, but you get your weight on the back of the ski. Very, very little you can do about it. A little unfortunate. Must have been run into a particularly soft patch, followed by an icy patch, and he went down pretty spectacularly. So we're down to 5. Yeah, you know, the waxing and the servicemen, the hidden heroes of cross-country and biathlon.
Yeah, absolutely. It amazed me just how much time the waxmen spend on the course. When there's conditions like that, the waxmen are just about as fit as the athletes, having to go up the same hill sometimes. Up to 100 times you see them going up and down, up and down.
Second incident, and this time it's Adrian Backscheider who goes down for France. So from 6 to 5, we're now down to a front group of 3, and a really good opportunity for Norwegian Sindre Skår, who leads, to wrap this one up. I think that's it is Shanava in second place. He's too wise to get caught up in a melee like that. Look through the legs from Skår just to suss the situation, and I think he'll be delighted to see the gap of 20 meters between second and third. There's no chance of matching that 3:19. Bolshunov still safe in the lucky loser slot, and I think he's also going to be joined by Victor Thorn, who has the second fastest lucky loser slot at the moment at 3:19.8.
So pay attention to Spitzhoff here. He came down the hill just a little bit behind. I think that if he keeps pressing here, he's going to be able to close this gap and potentially get through. He needs to get a first or second, though. He's coming, but has he left his charge too late? Shanava is wise. Skår of Norway far too alert to be caught out by that, and it was that margin of what, 20 meters at the top of the final hill. Spitzhoff needed to be just a fraction closer, get some help, get some slipstream on the way down towards the final corner, but it didn't happen. And again, the time much slower, 3:31, so 10 seconds slower than the fastest that we've seen so far. And if you're leading coming down that final hill, so far, those who have been leading have crossed the line either first or second.
There's the fall from the American Hanneman. What was going on there? Well, this is a little more understandable, just racing close quarters when you're skating, and actually that was no fault of Backscheider's at all. Might be a protest. Dennis Spitzhoff just going over his skating ski, and whose ever ski goes underneath stops dead.
Absolutely, it just slips right out from underneath you. There's very little you can do in those tightly packed situations. The skis are long, 192 centimeters on average probably, so you know it's very difficult to avoid each other when it gets tightly packed.
Skår and Shanava go through to the semis. One more heat to go. Now, what chances of getting a British qualifier? These conditions might suit Andrew Musgrave. He's the sort of fighter, the harder the conditions, the better he tends to do. We will see whether he can cope with this. Hikström wearing 22 for Sweden. On the right of your picture, number 20, that's Surrota. Next door to him, Andrew Musgrave wearing 15 indicating the position that he qualified in. He's the second fastest qualifier from this group, beaten though by Simon Kruger, the Olympic skiathlon champion from Pyeongchang last year. How many races did he get at the World Championships? 1. Incredible. They've got so many top-class skiers. So, Musgrave and Clunet racing for Great Britain. Clunet, generally the better sprinter of the two. Musgraves has made his name in distance racing, and he slits into the back. Now, let's have a look at the time up towards the top turn. 25 seconds, the last group. Fastest we've seen so far, 23.5, set by Bolshunov on the opening loop, 26.5. So, can we say already we won't get any lucky losers?
I think that's pretty certain, yes. So first and second will be the only opportunity to go through into the semi-finals.
Hekström has gone hard at the front of the field. Clunet done well to slot into second place, just ahead of Norway's Simon Kruger. Surrota in there for Norway as well, and still Andy Musgrave at the back of the group. Musgrave in his standard white headband. He's brave enough to choose a different route. There's a good move from Musgrave. It's come early on, a minute of racing gone. He's got another 2.5 minutes to go.
It's great to see Great Britain first, second and third at the moment. Just increasing the possibility that we're going to get a Union Jack going through into the semi-finals. When I asked Andrew Musgrave, what's your proudest moment to watch back on YouTube, for example, if you're ever feeling down, and the race in Norway when he won the sprint at the Norwegian Championships prior to the Sochi Olympics.
Well, and if I'm not mistaken, the conditions weren't far different from this. Very
heavy snowfall.
It was heavy snow. It was fresher than it is here, but he went for a surprise sprint with around 400 meters to go. It was a tremendous performance and got everyone excited before the 2014 Olympic Games in Sochi. Didn't quite manage to convert it, but each time he goes to a major, he gets more experience. It's Clunet, though, for Great Britain, who sits in second place. Musgrave now paying the price, maybe, for that little burst after a minute skiing, 2 minutes in, but he's still got lots of life in him, sitting in 5th place at the moment.
Clunet looking very strong coming up that rise there. Anybody in the top 4 right now has a very distinct chance of qualifying. It's certainly not favourable to go down in 2nd over 4th. It's completely open.
So Clunet it is who leads the way, and suddenly number 22, Johan Hegström, who looked strong early on, paying a bit of a price, but it might have been a tactical move from Hegström. You want some help on the downhill. When you're in front, you can't get it, and that is where Clunet is at the moment. So Britain leading. We've got Sweden in 2nd place, France in 3rd with Richard Jouve, who we haven't mentioned, but Jouve's had a great season as well, and we saw him producing some good results. Just missed out on a medal in the World Championships, finishing 4th behind Gleb Retvik of Russia.
Clunet going down the hill in 1st position. I think that is the strongest position to be going down in. Can he hold this?
He's got to hold the inside line.
He's got to hold the inside line.
Yeah, needs to stay ahead of Hegström, who's going hard and actually cuts him off. But Clunet still, he's dropping down a 3rd. That could be expensive. Kruger it is, who's come in for Norway. Last 120 metres. Great Britain looking for a place in the semi-finals. Clunet on the right of your screen at the moment, but he's losing ground. And it's Hegström of Norway who's found a second lease of life here in the final heat of the men's qualifying. And Kruger's going through a last-ditch effort from Clunet, but too late. I think Jouve actually had the better of the Brit there, and he will have finished in 3rd, but we'll see from the photo finish. Good effort, but tactically maybe a little bit naive to lead on the long downhill. Maybe chuck in behind, get some assistance, get some recovery before the last burst. So we move on to phase 2 of the first event in this mini tour in Quebec City for the finale of the cross-country World Cup season. The first of the women's semi-finals. 6 races still to go to decide who is going to pick up the 50 points for winning. So important. Østberg's done well to get through to this stage. If she makes it through to the final, that really does boost her chance of staying in yellow through to the final day and heading home to Norway with the crystal globe. Jonas Sundling, class act.
Under 23 world champion, she is a strong contender, very strong athlete, does a lot of gym work, so these conditions definitely favor her. Stina Nielsen, definitely a favorite for today. She is a strong, powerful athlete, and I think that if she can get into 1st position going over the top of the hill, there's very few people who can stop her from taking the win.
Yeah, her skate too looked fantastic earlier on in the 1st round. And then number 22 for Sweden as well, Ebba Andersson.
So a little bit of snowfall to contend with as well. Mainly a problem for the wax technicians.
So we're underway in the first of the semi-finals, and Nielsen looking very comfortable at the moment. Jonas Sundling also going well, wearing number 1.
She looks dynamic. I really have a good feeling about the way that she's moving on the skis. It's a tough day for balance. Because the snow is so unpredictable and there's little bumps here and there, it means that the athletes have to concentrate even more on getting their weight over each ski. And with the technical downhill, that fast right hand, we've seen a few stumbles there, and I think that as it gets more dug up, as the race matures, I think that that's going to be a tactical place, not being too far behind, because a stumble at that point will completely put you out of contention for top 3 position.
Usberg employing similar tactics. She's in the predominantly yellow, the yellow bib not quite as obvious as it normally is. She's the overall leader. Nielsen in the red bib as the sprint leader for the season. Fowler goes in semi-final number 2. And Fowler, of course, chose to go in heat number 3. So I'm not sure that's going to favour her chances when it comes to the final.
So here's the tricky right. Everybody little small steps so that there's no big movements into a thick bit of snow that could potentially throw them off.
Yeah, in those sort of conditions, really important to keep both the knees and the hands forward. You lose your hands, then you can easily find your skis overtaking the body. That's what we saw with the American Hanneman at the back end of the qualifying heats for the men. Usberg dances away to the top of the climb. This is the last of the climbs, and then they get a little reprieve as they head back down towards the finish area. 2:20 on the clock. Remember that, over the top of that climb, actually, there's another little summit that they have to round, a blind summit as such, and we'll take a time there for the first of the semis.
It could go any way still, Patrick. I think, you know, when it's tightly packed like this at this point in the race, it's very difficult to predict exactly who is in a favourable position.
2:38 the time at the top of the big climb, and it's still a fair way to go from here. Over a minute's racing on a nice, firm, potentially glazed day. You're looking at around 45, 50 seconds, but not in conditions like this. There's a brutal wind blowing as well into their faces as they come down the back straight, and hence it's advantageous to stay low with the free skate. Nielsen on the right of your screen, trying to switch into the V2. She gets such good long glide on each stride that that enables her to pull away from the field. So we got Sweden 1 and 2. Nielsen ahead of Sundling at the moment.
Certainly a very good move to go on the left side from Nielsen there. I think that it could be less damaged, the snow less damaged by the athlete, so I think favouring that left-hand side could be a good tactical move in the final.
Usberg looking for a lucky loser slot. She's starting to run out of puff, but a top 6 would be an absolutely unbelievable result for Usberg. She's in danger of being raced out of it in the closing stages. Nielsen takes the win. Sundling 2 Swedes through to the final. Caldwell just pipping Usberg in the end. 3:54 dead. How crucial is that going to be when it comes to seeing who goes through to the final? The best news, though, for Usberg is that Neprayeva did not qualify for the semi-final. So Neprayeva, who is second in the overall rankings, just looking to see where she finished in qualifying. She finished 6th, so she's still going to get some fairly good points. Might even finish 13th overall. But that does enable a fairly healthy swing towards Usberg in terms of the overall.
Impressive from Sundling. She had a fantastic race in Lillehammer, but not quite so established on the sprint races so far.
So 3:54, the lucky loser time at the moment. 3:51, the winning time in that heat. And that was 10 seconds slower than the first heat in the women's qualifying.
Wonder how much of that is just the track getting more brutalized by the skis.
Frida Karlsson, what a world championship she had. Came home with 3 medals. Maiken, Kaspersen, Fowler. 49 podium finishes. Is she going to get another one today and make it 50? That would be worth celebrating. Not tonight, but Sunday night. Charlotte Kalla of Sweden really shot to fame when she won the Tour de Ski back in 2008. Maja Dahlqvist lying third in the sprint standings. What a season she's had. Only once has she finished off the podium. And then Sadie Bjørnsen, fourth fastest qualifier today. She's not going to be easy to beat. It's a quality field. And then Jessie Diggins, she's popular north and south of the USA border.
She's certainly a character. Very vibrant, you can hear her from a mile away.
Take your start position.
Second of the women's semi-finals.
Set.
Well, if ever I saw a full start, but never mind. They are underway, and Falla on the far side wanting to get a good position. Is anyone brave enough to take this one out from the gun? Jessie Diggins, often see her come strong in the closing stages, really gritty performer, and she's got herself on the right-hand side of your screen at the moment. Nice skiing from Maja Dahlqvist. She's starting to look very, very relaxed on the skis.
Yeah, I think being relaxed is definitely a favourable... Oh, we've got a crash.
Well, that I think that may well have been Frida Karlsson who's gone down. No, Karlsson's through, and it's Charlotte Kalla that went down. And so suddenly, only two left in the race. And, well, that really is fortunate for Falla that she wasn't involved in that.
Yeah, and the leading three now need to push hard. Don't allow the chasing group to make a connection, because if they do, then they could be sacrificing one of those spots.
Well, we've not heard a lot from the crowd, so we could do with Diggins and Bjørnsen coming back into this. I think the Canadians' generosity would extend to cheering for the American athletes here. And just looking over her shoulder, Maja Dahlqvist slightly confused as to what is happening, but is this gain, is it going to be affected? The one person who won't have given up is Jess Diggins. Wow, and she's back in contact, but at what expense?
Well, do you know, I'm beginning to wonder if Dahlqvist even was aware that there was a crash behind her, because there wasn't an acceleration, there wasn't any tactical attempt to maintain that gap. And then, as we see, Jessica Diggins managing to close it.
Just about. There's still a way to go, and there's still some climbing to come. Jessie Diggins, you can see how tired she is now. Don't often see her stumble like that, almost making the same mistake as Hanneman a little earlier on today. Dahlqvist still with a lead. Falla, who's second in the sprint standings, in second at the moment, and Frida Karlsson, the new star of the Swedish team, in third and starting to make up ground. Now it's Falla who starts to break away, and this is where the Americans who close the gap will really be tested.
Bjørnsen still pushing very, very hard. I think Jessica Diggins looks to be losing a little bit of her spark.
Well, the last heat, the first of the semi-finals, 2:38 round this top corner. Just an indication as to whether we're going to get any lucky losers out of this group. 2:36, 2:37, 2:38. It's pretty much neck and neck between the two semi-finals. So if Karlsson can hang on in there in third place, she may well find herself go through as a lucky loser.
Oh, what a shame for the Americans. I think that they managed to catch up as they did. If they hadn't had that crash, they would be well and truly contending for first and second here.
Absolutely, but nothing comes for free in this game, and if you expend your energy early, you can't magic it out of nowhere for the end.
Unfortunately not.
3:54 to beat in terms of lucky losers. Sophie Caldwell is watching on from the sidelines, hoping that no one goes through, as is Ingvild Flugstad Østberg, and that is so crucial in terms of the World Cup points. 3:54.24 the time they need to beat, and they've got just under 30 seconds to achieve that. Round the top turn at 3:30, and it's still Falla of Norway who leads, but she's in a position to be shot at by the two Swedes. Good skiing from Dahlqvist, great skiing from Frida Karlsson, but Karlsson's starting to tire. Dahlqvist still looking comfortable, and it's going to be a comfortable qualification. Falla not really overexerting herself, I think realizing that second place is good enough. So in an eventful second semi, Dahlqvist, Falla go through. Bjørnsen and Diggins Did it record Frida Karlsson's time? Surely. Well, number 18 is Charlotte Kaller. We knew she was at the back. We'll just wait for confirmation on that, because I was pretty sure that Frida Karlsson finished in 3rd spot. Well, there's a very good reason for going out in front. This is where we had the stumble with Charlotte Kaller going down. Not sure who caused that. Welcome back to Quebec City. The women's finalists have been decided. Bjornsson, Karlsson, Dahlqvist, Faller, Nielsen and Sundling. And if your memory is good, you'll have recognised that the 2 lucky losers actually coming out of that 2nd semi-final. Karlsson, Bjornsson going through. So Sadie Bjornsson did exceptionally well. Now, the first of the men's semi-finals. And this promises to be fairly electric. Joni Mäki is in there. The Finns look good, Scott, in the first round.
Yeah, both managing to fantastic sprint finish, which is definitely what awarded them this semi-final.
Clevo still looking cool. A win in Falun last weekend. He had to work for it. He made a few mistakes. I think he was trying to, you know, expend as little energy on the first 1,500 meters as possible and win in the last 2. But we'll see how he gets on today. He won't want to take the risk. He has got to get some advantage over Bolshunov of Russia, who races in red wearing number 6. And Bolshunov went very, very fast in the first round. Can he do it again? If anyone can, he can. But it's an expensive way to race. Actually, my mistake, it's Melnichenko of Russia who's in this first semi. Bolshunov goes in the second. I didn't think his shoulders were quite broad enough.
Yeah, but it's a tough semi-final, that's for sure. Pellegrino, you know, he's so dynamic. The tempo that he went up the final hill in Seefeld for the World Championships was just incredible. I think it was just a tactical error on his behalf, not going down the hill in second position. I think that was the favourable position to go down that hill in. But I think Klæbo, I think he's controlling this race. It's not fast, which I think will be a relief to everybody.
Well, certainly to him, because he'll be confident that he can win this one in the last 150. Pellegrino likewise. He's got fantastic fast twitch, and he'll want to save as much for the final, making the assumption that he's going to go through. And actually sitting on the shoulder of Klæbo is a very, very good idea, because the rest of the field are going to show them plenty of respect. But there are men in there who know they're not going to finish in the top 2, and if they want to place in the final, they've got to go now. They cannot wait to the last couple of 100 meters.
Yeah, is it too much of a risk? Is anybody capable of putting in that amount of energy and doing anything but blowing up and come the final hill? Successfully around the dodgy corner.
Now the climbing starts again, and one of the advantages in these conditions of being out front is you're far less likely to get tied up with the rest of the athletes. There's always a chance that your ski basket, the basket on the pole, might get skied over, but Klæbo with a couple of metre advantage over Pellegrino. There's that change in tempo that served him so well throughout the season, and suddenly he's got a 5-metre lead. Little bit of climbing to come, and he's not worried about expending energy here, because he knows he's going to get some rest. Round the top corner, 2:16 on the clock for Klæbo.
Pellegrino tucked him very comfortably behind him, so it would take something quite catastrophic on their behalf for them to both lose this first and second position.
But the one advantage the rest have is it's quite a strong headwind at this stage. And that means that the slipstream effect is extended from, say, 10 metres back to around 15. And Sweden's Victor Thorn is in that margin. Looks, with this shot, as if he's getting a little bit closer.
Oh, it was a stumble from Victor Thorn.
Yeah, I think Pellegrino looked over his shoulder. Thorn thought he'd do the same, paid the price, and that's allowed Melnichenko of Russia to move up into 3rd position. So again, Klæbo just controls the pace, he slows it down, and he'll save something fairly electric for the final few 100 meters. But in these conditions with the soft snow, you've got to be careful. 2 best sprinters in the world, 1 and 2, and Melnichenko just can't live with it. So, the two big names go through to the final. Melnichenko, Thorne have to wait and see. 3:24.5, the fastest lucky loser time. At the moment, Victor Thorne on 3:25.68. And the second semi still to come, containing Bolshunov, Harvey, Score, Shanava, Kruger. Well, they've all done something in their time. Sadly, 3 Brits through to the top 30. None of them have made it through to the top 12.
It's a shame, but you know, it's very encouraging. 3 Brits in the top 20. I don't think that's something that you would have predicted 10 years ago. So definitely positivity on the British front.
Best atmosphere at a sprint this year, Konya. 100% of the population turned out to watch Pellegrino perform. So here's your lineup for the second semi. Fastest, as you can see from qualifying, Alexander Bolshunov, the man who lies in second place in the overall World Cup standings. And he is just a small margin behind, 14 points behind Johannes Husford-Klæbo. So important that he limits the damage. He's expecting to lose points to Klæbo today, but if he can limit the damage and he can beat the Norwegian, particularly tomorrow in the mass start, then it's going to be a tough job for the Norwegian to win the overall for the second season in succession.
I think he needs to be careful. If he goes too hard, then he's going to hinder his performance tomorrow. And also, the contenders in this heat are strong, and if he goes too hard at the beginning, he's not going to be able to sustain that for the sprint finish.
Well, there's Kruger, who we saw in the World Championship 50K. Lukas Shanava.
Tactical error from him in Seefeld at the World Championships, going down the hill first, ending up at the back of the pack.
And then Alex Harvey, who is the only man here who has home support. And yeah, it'd be interesting to know what sort of effect. Has he had a Bradley Wiggins effect on skiing, you know, as Bradley's had on British cycling? I would say that's probably the case.
Yeah, certainly he's a bit of a celebrity, and it's great. It's great to see other nations, America, Canada, getting to the top of the sport, because it is dominated by Norway, and anybody else who creeps up the ranking, it just improves the spectatorship for everybody else.
Well, so much is about funding in this game. Obviously, culture plays a huge part, and just about every school kid in Norway can ski. You only have to go to the Holmenkollen Stadium on a weekday, and you'll see endless primary school classes coming up and being given an hour and a half out on the cross-country skis. And, you know, you've got a big base, you're going to have a high pyramid. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, certainly, and the balance is just amazing. You see kids who look so young that they shouldn't be able to walk out there skiing, playing football on their skis. It's incredible. It's little wonder they're so successful. Bolshunov going hard again. How are his legs able to cope with this amount of intensity? It's certainly imposing, it's intimidating. Somebody who's willing to punish their body so much, you just know that if it comes down to a sprint finish, you're against a tiger, somebody who's going to give every single bit of energy.
Well, he has spread the field out dramatically. We haven't had this sort of a margin between first and sixth at any stage in the competition so far. And Bolshunov is making absolutely sure he is going to be in the lineup for the final. Nothing would give him more pleasure than beating Johannes Husford-Klæbo. Lots of needle between those two at the World Championships. Remember the little collision they had in the semi-final, I think it was, in the World Championship sprint event?
Yeah, there was definitely a lot of tension between the Russians and the Norwegians. Usagov, he was certainly not a happy man at the end of the sprint race, thinking that Klæbo had done something wrong, but you know, that was open to debate. I think a lot of mixed opinions on the matter.
Yeah, mixed opinions, but you know, the rules need to be absolutely clear. And as I understand it, if you're coming from behind, you don't have right of way. And Bolshunov was trying to get through a gap that was there for a moment. But then when he tried to get through the gap, it wasn't there. But you cannot, when you're skating, you cannot blame someone going from their left ski to the right ski. That's what you do.
How many times have we watched this video, Patrick? I think we'll agree to disagree for this moment.
So, Bolshunov still with the lead as they come down to the final turn. Melnichenko on 3:24. Those are the lucky losers' times. So we're looking pretty good for that. I think we might be, because Bolshunov has set a punishing pace once again. Number 9 is Sindre Bjornstad Skår of Norway. He's just pipped through into the front. This is what happened to Bolshunov in the first round, but he was still strong enough to go through.
Hagestrom making a move. Is it possible that he's going to be able to take Bolshunov in the final 50 meters? He certainly has momentum.
Yeah, looking good. Hagstrom from Sweden on the far side. Bolshunov decided to go right, but the Swede was already there. There was no way through, and it's going to be about timing for the lunge. Bolshunov gets it, and he just imposes himself in that last 5 meters. So Skår is through, Bolshunov is through, and the time at 3:23, I think we might get 2 lucky losers out of that one. And those who go through as lucky losers should go straight up to Bolshunov and say, thanks, mate, you have got me through to another race.
You may have punished me quite a lot. I suffered a lot of pain, but I'm through.
Welcome back to Quebec City. We've just seen a replay of the end of that second semi-final, and very questionable as to whether Bolshunov should be disqualified, actually. He changed lanes and blatantly obstructed Hagstrom of Sweden. Now, I suspect the Swedes haven't put a protest in because that would be an advantage to Klæbo of Norway, and the Swedes, if there's one nation they don't want to win, it's the Norwegians.
Absolutely.
It'd be interesting to know, but it would take the Swedes to put in a protest for that to change. Let's focus on the women's final for now, though. Another 4 minutes or so before we know who is going to walk away with the 50 points. Frida Karlsson of Sweden, can she win a sprint? Well, that would be a major, major achievement. I think she's going to struggle because Maja Dahlqvist and Stina Nielsen have both looked fantastic so far.
Stina Nielsen, again, yellow card, but that shouldn't be too big of an issue for her today. She's probably going to get herself to the front where she's out of trouble, out of the pack, and out of the risk of having any poles broken.
Of course, Sweden, who got a 1, 2, 3, 4 in Dresden in the sprint there, very different course profile to the one we have here, but they have a chance of doing exactly the same again. Maiken, Kaspersen, Faller. This is an absolutely crucial race. She needs to win and hope that Stina Nielsen doesn't make the top 2. If that happens, then Faller will walk away with the season's crown.
I suspect the odds are against her.
I think the odds are against her. And Stina Nielsen, who's notched up 4 victories this season, certainly has been the class act. But of the last 4 sprints, Faller has won 3. So it is not over till it's over. So keep your eye on the Norwegian suit, Faller on the left-hand side of your screen, and Stina Nielsen, of course, who wears red and goes straight into a controlling position here. Faller's best bet, I think, is to stick in behind Nielsen as long as she can, and maybe hope that there's a little stumble or something. That might be her only chance. USA with Sadie Bjørnsen wearing 4. And at the back, we have Jonna Sundling, who was the fastest qualifier, happy to round the corner in 5th, 6th place. And Stina Nielsen looking comfortable. Is she going to lead all the way?
Well, I think, you know, Jonna Sundling being one of the quickest sprint finishes, I think it's dangerous. If you're leading all the way, losing a little bit of that energy, that little bit of spark come the sprint finish, I think it's going to stay tightly packed. Everybody in this final is well and truly fit enough to stay with an intense pace.
Well, certainly, Nielsen has been the quietest skier so far. Faller, she's looked left, she's looked right, she's tried the front, she's tried the back. I'm not quite sure she went into this race knowing exactly what the tactics were, and she seems to have been working desperately hard, whereas Nielsen, I know she's taller and her tempo generally is slower, but Nielsen looks to be very, very stiff. There's the first mistake.
Yeah, and Faller, look, she's at the back, she got tangled up in poles, she had to decelerate so that she got out of the way, I think it was of Jonna Sundling's poles. So now she's at at the back in a not so favourable position.
And she's got a Swedish wall to try and get through if she wants to take the win here. Her chances of taking the sprint Crystal Globe are looking slim at the moment, with Falla right at the back of the pack as they go through the 1:41 stage. The average time for a women's run here, around 3:45. This hasn't been particularly quick, but I'm just slightly confused why Falla hasn't settled in. She had that position just tucked in behind Nielsen. Why she didn't stay there?
She doesn't look relaxed on her skis. She's shuffling her weight from side to side. She's misweighting her skis. She's not correctly pole planting as she goes around the corner. She doesn't look relaxed. Perhaps she knows how much pressure is on her shoulders to achieve a top result in this race. She knows she needs to win, and it's got to her.
A top result? I think the Norwegians will be hoping that she can just stop the 1, 2, 3, 4 happening to Sweden again. And look at the margin that Nielsen's opened up now. Brilliant skiing from Nielsen, accelerated over the top of the climb, and the lead has gone from 8 metres over Falla of Norway to around 28. No doubt, Nielsen's heading towards the Crystal Globe for the sprint. It's a well-deserved title for her. But can she round the season off with a win? Sundling is still there, and Sundling looking very strong. We've got Karlsson of Sweden in there as well. Maja Dahlqvist has looked strong.
So just a few meters between Sundling and her teammate in front of her. So I think that is just a little bit, it's close enough that if she can close that gap, then she's still absolutely in contention to win this race.
So Nielsen in the red bib. Little bit of a stumble from Maja Dahlqvist in second place. Number 1 is Jonas Sundling, and Frida Karlsson just starting to struggle a bit at the moment, but Falla making or paying the price for having a really messy first half to this race. It's going to be a 1, 2, 3 for Sweden, but who is going to take the final sprint race of the season? The Swedish fans will be loving this, and especially those who live in Falun and Östersund. They were following the last World Cup every step of the way, and of course it's Nielsen who ups the pace coming into the home straight, but a good charge is that Dahlqvist coming through. Very tight. Dahlqvist with the best finish over the last 10 metres. She left her charge about 5 metres too late, but Nielsen it is, secures win number 5 for the season, and she takes the Crystal Globe for the sprints for the season, and she takes her tally on to 626 points in total.
That's certainly going to wound the Norwegian ego. 1, 2, 3 for Sweden.
Party time, but 2 more days of racing, and that's nice to see. Falla straight over, and the first person she congratulates is the woman who has taken her sprint title away from her. It's been a difficult season for Falla, you know, 4th, 16th, 7th in the first 3 sprints, then it was an uphill battle. Finally found her form as we headed towards the World Championships. She did take the world title.
Yeah, and it was impressive racing out there. It's very tactical, and maybe that suits her, because when you have these tactical races, it's important that you have a good, strong team behind you that tells you, or at least indicates, where you're supposed to be at what points on the track. It's not just the athletes out there who make these decisions. It's very well thought through which parts are best to go and where you want to be at what times.
Well, that's interesting. You know, when you cross the line half an inch in front of someone, you know about it. But Nielsen plainly did not realise that she had taken the win there. And it's probably because a metre after the line, Dahlqvist was in front of her.
And also, when you're pushing that hard from the start like she was, maybe the blood has drained from her eyes, and it's much more difficult to see. It's certainly the case in biathlon if you've been pushing hard.
So there are your 3 podium finishers, and Swedish cross-country skiing is going places, certainly in terms of the women's tour. Nielsen has been leading the way, and with Charlotte Kalla coming towards the end of her career, it's been, you know, a disappointing season in many ways for Charlotte Kalla, but such good news for Sweden that they've got someone to fill her boots.
Yeah, absolutely, and plenty to fill her boots as well. And it looks like whatever the Swedes are doing, whatever from the top, their organization, their training camps, their system, it's working.
But for the last decade, their focus has always been on the majors. And they've been quite honest about that, saying, look, This is where we make our money, and this is what we focus on. To see Stina Nielsen taking the Sprint World Cup title is an indication that maybe they've now got the confidence to go for World Cups and World Championships.
Well, certainly the spectatorship always increases as success comes. It's the same in biathlon. Martin Fourcade just brought a massive French audience, and when that happens, the funding will be more distributed to different parts of the World Cup circuit, allowing better results to come, and better results breed better results.
Yeah, but a few thousand Swedish krona or euros here and there, honestly, they don't make a lot of difference. It's the fact that all the school kids see this and think, that is what I want to do.
Yeah, YouTube videos inspiring them.
So it wasn't the most dramatic final, but it was an impressive one in terms of Stina Nielsen, and they're going to try and work out the timing for the traditional leap. Surely the photographers can think of something else to see at the end of the race. But great news for Sweden. It's not just about Stina Nielsen. Dahlqvist finishes second, and Sundling, who produced the fastest qualifying time today, takes third spot, keeping Faller at bay. Faller had a slim chance of winning the sprint title, but it's come to nothing, finishing down in fourth place. Carlson 5 and Sadie Björnsson of the United States getting in there. Jessie Diggins a little unlucky, caught up in a mix-up with Charlotte Kalla of Sweden. A little bit of Bengalis, is it? Expecting to see someone running across the slopes in short
slow motion.
in slow motion. So the final sprint of the season is over. 2 more days of racing. Will Stina Nielsen go all the way? I hope so. Be nice to see her competing in the 2 races to come, a 10-kilometre mass start and then a pursuit on the final day on Sunday to wrap up the season. The women's title still to be decided. Ingvild Östberg hasn't done herself any harm at all. She's extended her lead over Nepraeva to over 100 points. And I think it's going to come down to the allocation of points for the total, the finishing positions in the mini tour, because the 50 points for tomorrow, the 50 points for Sunday, they're not going to be good enough for Nepraeva. She has got to beat Östberg in the overall title to have a chance.
Yeah, certainly. Pressure's on for Nepraeva. She's got to pull out some incredible results if she wants to close that gap. But is it too much? It seems likely, but you never know. This is the beauty of sports like this, where there's a little bit of unpredictability.
Stina Nielsen, congratulations on a very tough fight today at the sprint here at Quebec. Conditions were difficult. How did you feel?
Yeah, the conditions were really hard today, and it was hard to find the perfect tactic because the wind was so strong, and it was not so good to be first on the last downhill, but in the end I wanted to go hard in the last uphill because that's my strongest part, so I went for it, and I'm so glad that it was my toenail before Maya's.
It was your day. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Well, it certainly was, and she did go hard. Couldn't shake off Maya Dahlqvist in that final uphill, but it was remarkable how much of a gap she opened up between herself and Faller.
Yeah, absolutely, and the top 3 pushing so hard over the top of that hill, and that gap just increasing and increasing.
One race to go. I think the crowd will be happy to go home after this. They're looking a little bit miserable. We need some Canadian sunshine just to liven things up a little bit. But this should be a cracking final. It's a Bolshunov-Klebo showdown, and guess what? They start next door to each other on the start line. There may be a few antics before they've gone the first 50 meters. We will see. Chanovar is in there for France as well. Hegström of Sweden has gone through. Score, Bolshunov, perhaps lucky to come through after that little collision in the final stages of his semi. Pellegrino for Italy, and then Klebo, of course, of Norway. And Klebo looking for win number 8 for the season. The sprint title is his. This is just about pride.
It'd be interesting, you know, with Pellegrino in a sprint finish with Klæbo, you would favour Klæbo, but Pellegrino, he's really showed, I think, in the qualifying rounds there, that he's got this spark, and with a bit of tactical effort, I think he will be able to get himself in a good position.
There's Bolshunov. And you can see second in the overall. He's got a bit of work to do. 14 points in it. If he can beat Klæbo today, that would make such a massive, massive difference over the next 2 days. But he's a bit of a genius when it comes to sprinting, Klæbo, and we've seen some remarkable races from him this year. Federico Pellegrino, he's second in the standings, only 2 wins. He won in Lillehammer, and then he had a fantastic win in Konya in front of thousands of fans. That was a baking hot day, and of course he broke a pole in the final, still came through to take the win.
Mad, I just wonder, will Bolshunov opt to go incredibly hard out straight away again, or will he go tactical and hang back? Looks like he's hanging back.
If they go fast, they've got 3 minutes 20 of racing to go. If it's a steady one, it may turn out to be around 3:35, 3:40, but it doesn't look to be a snail's pace at the moment. Shanover out front, and he's the first to settle into some form of steady pace, and everyone relatively happy with that. Bolshunov at the back, totally different tactic from Bolshunov this time.
Yeah, I was surprised. Then again, he surely wasn't able to sustain such a high intensity. So I think it's very intelligent racing on his behalf to take it a little bit easier and to make an attack on the big hill.
Yeah, I suspect his tactics were to get himself into the top 6, get a decent handful of points, limit the damage that Klæbo can do to him.
But Klæbo, he moved out to the side there. I thought he might be trying to make a move, being aware that Bolshunov is at the back. If he makes a move over the top of the hill, will that make the group stretch out and make it more difficult for Bolshunov to close down any gap that's created?
Well, I'll tell you what Klæbo has to do, and that is to be a little bit careful. The snow is a good 2-3 inches deeper than it was at the start of this sprint competition. It's treacherous conditions for sprint racing, especially when you turn up the tempo as Klæbo is wont to do. Little climb coming up. Is he going to make a burst on the next ascent? Bolshunov keeping an eye on the Norwegian, tucking in behind Pellegrino. Not a bad idea, because you know if Klæbo moves, Pellegrino will go with him.
Absolutely, and not only will he go with him, it will be like watching mirror images. He'll just react. He's so dynamic that as soon as anybody else goes, he's able to respond and immediately put in powerful enough kicks that no gap is created.
Score of Norway is the man leading, and he slowly winds up the pace. Klæbo goes with him. Pellegrino trying to go on the outside in green. Bolshunov is there as well, but Bolshunov not looking as comfortable as he did in the first round or his semi-final, and he's stuck in 4th place at the moment. But it is still score of Norway. Now, the Norwegian team, I'm not sure they'll be too happy if score takes 20 points away from Klæbo.
Oh, that might not be too good for him. Bolshunov, I actually think, is in probably one of the strongest positions going down this hill, as long as he can close that gap to Pellegrino, because like I said before, the wind is going to be heavy into the front of Score, so he needs to take advantage of that slipstream.
Well, he's in a good spot at the moment, Bolshunov, and he just accelerates at the top of the downhill. Should be able to close that gap down nicely, and then he'll stand tall to make sure he doesn't run up on the back of the skis of Pellegrino. Steps to his right. Suddenly we have 4 side by side, and Klæbo on the inside. The right of your screen goes hard. Pellegrino trying to hold off the Russian, and he seems to have managed that with a little burst of speed. But it's not this burst that matters. It's the final burst when they come into the home straight.
And Bolshunov having to go around the outside of the corner, certainly not something that he wanted to do. He needs to close down this gap now.
So 120 metres to go of the final sprint of the season, and once again it's Johannes Husford Klæbo who steps up the pace and shows his class. From 5, he's now 10 metres clear. Pellegrino runner-up yet again, and Score does Klæbo a favour, gets his foot in front of Bolshunov, and that will make some difference when it comes to the allocation of points. Well, it was absolutely perfect for Klæbo. he took it easy. He knew it was dangerous to be in the group, so he always found a little bit of space. And once again, no one can beat him over the last 120.
No, he's just got this. He's so dynamic, and his tempo, it's incredible. It's like watching Northug once over again, you know. It's just, he's untouchable. Pellegrino, even at his best, the gap seems to open, and you don't quite understand why the gap is opening. It just is. It's just absolute dynamacy.
So 40 points for fourth place. The points much closer in the mini tours because you only pick up 50 points for the win, and 43 is for third. You get 40 for fourth, so only 10 points gained by Klæbo over Bolsjunov. So the margin at the top of the World Cup standings, by my calculation, so it's very much unofficial, goes to 24.
It's not a lot, so there's a lot to play for in the coming 2 races.
But score with that last lunge saved 3 points for the Norwegian. That might come in handy. I hope a percentage of the purse goes to Klæbo, goes to score if Klæbo does end up winning the overall World Cup. He's already taken the sprint title. He's been totally dominant this year. So he makes it 8 sprints victories this year, and it would have been 9 if he hadn't lost concentration in the very first sprint of the season in Ruka.
Oh yeah, he'll still be kicking himself about that. That was such a shame. I think that, yeah, if you're so dominant, you can become naive, become complacent, and not look behind you, and obviously that's what happened.
You say a shame, but actually it's a good lesson to learn, because he has not been like that in any race for the rest of the season. I very much doubt we'll see him lose a race like that in the rest of his career.
Yeah, I think so. It's important that you learn these harsh lessons, and of course it feels terrible at the time, but I'm sure at this moment right now he's recovered from that. He won't be experiencing that right now.
So the best sprinter in the world is back on top in Quebec, and he has 2 more races to go. Certainly from what we saw in Falun, Scott, he's certainly not on as good a form in the distance races as we've seen him at the beginning of last season. Bolsjunov, 24 points to make up. It's going to be close, but the one thing in Klæbo's favour is the fact that the race is essentially a mass start.
Yeah, definitely. I actually think Bolsjunov stands a better chance of taking the top prize, because his relentless attack from the gun in whatever race it is, he just goes and goes and goes. I think that he's, yeah, definitely in these tough conditions as well, like we saw in Seefeld at the World Champs, it seems to suit him. And like you said, Klæbo, in these long distance races, he's just not as strong.
But Klæbo, you know, he doesn't need to beat Bolsjunov. He just needs to finish one behind him. So
but he needs to hang on.
He hasn't got to chase Bolsjunov. He's got to chase the man behind Bolsjunov and tuck in behind him. So if Bolsjunov breaks a minute clear and wins the mini tour, if Klæbo finishes in second, he's still in a good position.
Yeah, absolutely. But then you've got a lot of strong athletes, you know, that are in contention for a podium.
Yeah.
And it's, yeah, you definitely wouldn't write anybody else off from getting a first, second, third.
Well, we've got a lot of homework to do tonight to work out all the points and all the connotations and find out just exactly what Bolsjunov has got to do to take his first overall Crystal Globe. It should be a fantastic finale to the season. It's been a brilliant finish for the Swedish sprinters. They took 1, 2, 3 in the women's. Klæbo, though, the men's champion. Pellegrino back on the podium, but runner-up for, what's that, the 4th time this year. He's finished in 2nd place, but he adds that to the 2 wins that he has had this season. 3:22.14. They certainly didn't take it easy on that last final. Klæbo, Pellegrino score. Bolsjunov just off the podium, but minimum damage done to his overall chances. So that's all from Quebec. More cross-country skiing coming up tomorrow. There's more biathlon tomorrow, the final weekend of the winter season. And then we've got a long way until the end of November before we'll be back. But do join us tomorrow for the last couple of days of Nordic action.